Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to Vietnam from a very cold Germany, where we had the first snow of the season just a couple of days ago. And if I look outside, it's just foggy, but I think we can look at some very bright things, just like you can do when you look outside in Vietnam. And that we will talk today about the master program in global finance and economics, and I'll try to explain why, from the perspective of Dr. Ha and myself, this could well be a game-changing opportunity for many of you. As Dr. Ha said already, if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to post them to him. He may answer some of them directly. For others, he may choose to pass them on to me during the presentation, but in any case, we'll also have time for Q&A following the presentation, and you can ask further questions then. But again, don't let that deter you from asking questions during the presentation as well, if you think that's directly related to points that we are covering in the presentation. It's always a bit uncomfortable to talk about oneself, but because we are going to try to convince you to join our master program in global finance economics, and we know that there are competitors that all say great things about their programs, I think it's also important to say a bit about credibility and to help you, to assess credibility on the basis of track records. So briefly a bit about myself. I did my PhD in economics at the University of Pennsylvania in 1995. I would say Penn has a world-class economics faculty, but it's probably most known on a global scale for its Wharton School as a standard setter for MBA programs and executive education, specifically also executive education in finance. Following my PhD, I was a faculty member at the University of Maryland. Now I'm at the University of Frankfurt. And in the meantime, also had stints at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, the University of Cambridge in the UK, and gained practical experience inter alia at the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the European Central Bank. In terms of design and management of degree programs, I have been founding dean and continue to be the dean of the Graduate School of Economics, Finance and Management that involves 3 German universities and a focus in particular on PhD, that is a doctoral program offerings. In terms of research, I'm currently a co-coordinator together with John Taylor at Stanford and my colleague Volker Wieland at Goethe University of a research network where we look into issues of making macroeconomic modeling research more replicable, increase the robustness of findings, specifically through a macroeconomic model database that can be used to analyze the effects of policy changes in the economic environment on core macroeconomic variables, output, employment, inflation, through a large number of models. At this point, we have about 150 structural models in this macro modeling database. As for Dr. Ha, he did his PhD in economics at the University of Groningen in 2014. Groningen is certainly a place particularly well known for its work at the interface of econometrics and macroeconomics. You may probably have already heard about the so-called Penn World Table data. A good bit nowadays is actually run by the University of Groningen, so a highly prominent place as well. Dr. Ha is, as you know, on the faculty at VGU, and as you probably also know, and maybe know even more than me, he has been also at the State Bank of Vietnam in influential economic decision-making, and at present also serves as far as program coordination and program management is concerned as the program coordinator of the Bachelor in Business Administration at VGU. but will also be in the future then responsible for the Global Finance and Economics Master Program. So much about our background on this one. I would say let's not take questions right now, but if you have more questions about it, want to learn more about us personally, then that could be something we can certainly take up during the Q&A portion. Let me start talking about the program per se that runs under the title Global Finance and Economics. Is a program that is going to be run jointly by the Faculty of Economics and Business at Goethe University in Frankfurt, as well as the Faculty of Economics and Management at VGU. And just so to symbolize that, of course, it's much deeper than issues of location. I've put pictures up here of both the new campus of VGU that I understand VGU is extremely proud about, and here's just one picture also about the campus west end of Goethe University, and Goethe University is also very proud of its own campus and thinks it's one of the most beautiful in Europe. In any case, more than locations, what is this cooperation about? We wish to leverage our joint resources to establish in Asia one of the premier master programs in finance and economics. The idea is that we wish to make sure that the graduates of our program will be so strongly skilled, quantitatively as well as analytically, that they will take on challenging, eventually leading positions in the financial markets and in the economic analysis around Southeast Asia, and in that form also contribute eventually to the development of those markets. That's the big picture vision behind this program. Now, before we get into details of the program structure, issues of what's the application process going to be and so forth, let me talk a little bit about why should it be a very exciting time to think about advancing your knowledge and skills of issues related to financial markets, related to economic analysis specifically on the side of policymaking, as exemplified, for example, through monetary economics. Well, if we look at the world today, right? I mean, we live in the middle of a pandemic, and unfortunately not that long ago before the pandemic, we were struggling with a global financial crisis, subsequent regional financial crisis, for example, European sovereign debt crisis, and all that has caused central banks to think about rather unprecedented monetary policy steps, designing monetary policy programs that effectively could render many of the central banks that had reduced the interest rate at which they are lending to commercial banks to zero, where they couldn't reduce that further, because otherwise that would basically pay your borrowers for their willingness to take up a loan. They had to design different means of trying to further stabilize economies. That has led to a huge amount of discussions, for example, also surrounding the issue, do such unprecedented unconventional monetary policies cause problems for financial stability? We're seeing in various countries, for example, a virtual explosion of real estate prices. And with that, of course, the question, could that lead to another bubble where those housing price developments are not sustainable, where they will crash, leading to another financial crisis? Remember, the starting point of the global financial crisis was the collapse of housing prices in the US in 2007, 2008. That's one issue of concern there, that we may just set the stage for running into just another major crisis. But of course, in this context also, given that we had enormous growth, not just of housing prices, but asset prices in many markets. The question of financial stability, indeed, at large, perhaps even beyond crisis issues. Another big issue on the agenda these days, if you think about the meetings in Glasgow on the global climate crisis, right? These efforts to think about what can we effectively do to better align sustainable economic development, sustainable improvements in the standard of living, in the wealth of nations, also with care for the environment, and making sure that future generations can also operate in environments that allow them to maintain and even more than that, increase their standard of living. And so in this context, there's been quite a bit of a debate. Should we go into regulating markets, for example, through tax policies, right? That there would be taxes on carbon emissions. That's a relatively standard approach in macroeconomics, to think about using fiscal policy instruments to regulate the level of economic activity. A quite different approach now has recently arisen in financial markets, specifically in the US. There has been a set of so-called environmental, social, and governance regulations, ESG. Similar such regulations are now in place in other countries, other continents, under slightly different names. But the common idea is to say, could we regulate financial markets in such a way that effectively they steer the funds that are provided to financial markets in such a form that it's in line with the ideas of what many people call green investment. That is trying to steer resources in such a way that those firms that operate in a sustainable manner have good access to financing, but that access to financing becomes much harder for those who are, in simplified terms, the major polluters. And so now there's a debate about what's the best instrument: fiscal policy, financial market regulation. A very nice illustration, even though the topic per se, of course, is rather hard, right? To witness how we are endangering possibly the future of humanity through degrading the environment. But it's a very exciting issue to think about how can economists really in a fundamental way contribute to sustainable economics, to changing the course of direction in terms of climate change. Now, fiscal policy, I already talked a bit about it in the context of it partly also playing a role in the climate risk context. I trust you have been following partially what's, for example, been happening in China the last few weeks, right? That the Chinese government has said it has to do something in order to address rising, in particular, wealth inequality within China and make wealth more accessible to the Chinese population at large. And so I started to think about instruments such as taxing real estate in order to ensure that there's a broader ownership of real estate across China, and possibly also much more affordable real estate, specifically in major metropolitan areas of China. And again, the issue is now, how can fiscal policy instruments, tax instruments, but potentially also other instruments help in terms of reducing such inequalities without at the same time, right, of course, jeopardizing the enormous growth experience that China's been going through. I've been giving the example of China, but of course we could discuss that in the context of other economies as well. But if you're already talking about China, of course, China is also a great example of seeing how demographic change starts to worry policymakers, how the aging of the population leads also to the question of what can we do in terms of fiscal policy, but perhaps also in terms of policies to provide incentives for individuals to provide for their own retirement age. What policies can be designed in order to make that a sustainable process, the aging of populations. So a couple more issues, and I'm sure I could on exciting issues in finance and economics alone talk for many hours, but of course that's not the point. So briefly, two other issues. We all are aware, right, how banking financial services become digitalized and how around the globe we are discussing the further advance of cryptocurrencies and partly even the replacement of traditional banknotes and coins through cryptocurrency. It's major issues arising there in terms of who's the lender of last resort, who at the end is going to provide a backup guarantee if some currency was to become worthless, right? And from that perspective, of course, governments also caring a great deal about what is going to be their position in cryptocurrency markets. And that's a discussion that's going to be essential for central banks around the globe in the years to come. If you think about issues that are not related to specific policy discussions in recent weeks, months, years, of course, the issue of globalization has also greatly affected decision-making in financial markets, for example, when it comes to portfolio allocation or more broadly at financial investment. In the presence of global interdependencies with huge financial capital flow occurring from advanced economies to emerging markets, but possibly then back from emerging markets to the advanced economies, as at some point central banks in advanced economies are very likely to raise interest rates again, rates of returns on bonds starting to rise again in advanced economies. What is that going to imply for the emerging markets, for the developing economies, if financial market investors are going to withdraw their funds from the emerging markets, from developing economies for their own financial and economic development, right? So the perennial issue for quite some time now accompanying the general phenomenon of globalization. And so I'm putting that in here, of course, also to give you a further idea why we are calling this program Global Finance Economics, because many, if not all of these challenges that we have been discussing here on the slide are challenges on a global scale. Of course, that doesn't mean that countries will not need to find their own individual best policies in wake of these challenges, but we also need to understand that there's, of course, a global connection in it, and that if we just think about, for example, the issue of climate change once more, that it's great if a country advances its own policies in such form that there's going to be less carbon emission. But if all other countries were continuing to pollute, of course, that's not a sustainable solution, right? So this set of challenges, many of them will require not just country-specific, but also global responses. And so in that sense, it seems also very fitting that our program is labeled Global Finance and Economics. And I think it's a safe bet to say the global nature of challenges, whatever new challenges we may see ahead in the years and decades to come, they're ever going to be more global than just on a local scale. And so that's I think also a good investment into a longer term future to think about a program that really thinks about issues from a more global perspective. All right, now moving more to the design of the program that we are in the process of setting up, how we're going to try to help the participants and eventual graduates of our programs to meet those challenges and contribute to society resolving these challenges, at least reducing their severity. Well, our program is going to have a very clear, unapologetic focus on training its participants in state-of-the-art methods in finance. And with state-of-the-art, we don't mean something, that you see in textbooks that often were written 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago and just have minor revisions over time. We really mean a training that's aligned with what is the state-of-the-art knowledge in research in finance, in micro, macro, international economics, in econometrics, in data science. We're also going to make sure that everyone in the program knows how to set up his or her own routines, programming in open source code, so as to work on the substantive issues in finance and economics. So broadly speaking, through participation in the program, you will acquire a state-of-the-art quantitative toolkit on the basis of which, when we look at the data, you can analyze what is in the data, can think about possible policy responses, and then simulate these responses of policies in models that you can build with the knowledge that you have acquired in the program. So this program is not designed in a form, that we have chats about major issues in financial markets. Here some practitioners talk about what they think should be done. And in the end, when new challenges arise, when modifications of challenges arise, you're being basically clueless again. We want to build a lasting education so that upon graduation of the program, you can really go into the data by yourself, analyze the data, again, think about policy design, and then most importantly, also assess what those policies will do quantitatively, because you have the skill to build mathematical quantitative models. I think that's the only way to really address challenges on your own, rather than just to listen to others, what their proposals are. Cost of it is, it's going to involve academic rigor. This is not going to be a program where I would say, if in the last hour of the day, when you're really exhausted from anything else, you can open the lecture notes from this program, work on the problem sets of this program, and do this handily. That's not going to work. This is really going to involve investing time into understanding the methodologies, getting the experience yourself in applying these methodologies. And from that perspective, of course, there is a cost. But what we'll try to convince you of is that you're going to be richly rewarded for this cost in terms of all the opportunities that will arise for you down the road. The courses are all going to be taught by first-rate academics. I'll come back a bit to the faculty on a subsequent slide. But what we're also going to do is we are really going to involve high-level practitioners who themselves have the background in quantitative analysis, who are not representatives merely of their institutions, but who really themselves understand the issues, design solutions for issues, and weigh the pros and cons between different solution approaches. These can be experts who work, for example, at the International Monetary Fund, who understand the economic modeling there, and yet at the same time may have been representatives, for example, to Vietnam in understanding what's happening in Vietnam and making suggestions from the International Monetary Fund's perspective for economic policy design in Vietnam. They may be practitioners from banks who have actually been CEOs of major Vietnamese banks and perhaps even moved on in their careers to global careers. High-level practitioners who, again, will demonstrate to you that what we are going to teach in the program in terms of methods and the way to apply them in a sensible form to practical problems, that you can see that that's not just some academics who sit in some ivory tower and design issues that do not get implementation in the real world, but you will see those practitioners will do just what we are talking about in the classes teaching methodology as well. One last point, given that we have been stressing the global nature of the program, having a global perspective also, of course, benefits from having sampled oneself. Life experiences in different parts of the globe. And so our contribution to globalization there is that we will offer within the program an optional, not a mandatory, an optional stay at Goethe University, and that's going to occur specifically at the stage of writing the master thesis. You will, throughout the program, benefit from rather small class sizes, not the larger class sizes that are actually quite common in the master programs at Goethe University and other German universities, but you will benefit throughout the core stage of the program from small class sizes. But then when it comes to basically doing your own work in depth for the master thesis, picking one specific topic where you say, let me show I can actually apply, use the methods to address in a substantive manner on my own issues in financial markets, economic analysis, that you can do that work with the master thesis advisor on the campus of Goethe University. And we'll also see that optional stay will entail a program that we call Experience Frankfurt. That is where we'll also give you exposure to two central banks. Frankfurt is probably the only place in the world that is home to two central banks, the European Central Bank. You see the tower of the European Central Bank here on this picture, as well as the Deutsche Bundesbank, and of course beyond that also home to a myriad of local as well as global firms in financial services. And so in that sense, we're also again going to combine, of course, to make sure I've mentioned the meaning of those pictures here, combine practical issues with academic work. This is a desk that belonged to Theodor Adorno, a major social scientist on the campus west end of Goethe University. All right. More specifically to the structure of the program, how is it going to be set up? I would distinguish four major stages in the program: the foundational phase, the specialization phase, the modules and courses that involve acquiring skills beyond quantitative finance economics, but invest much more broadly into transferable skills that are undoubtedly also of great relevance for a successful professional career, and that in-depth hands-on phase of the program involving the master thesis. So to start with the foundations, to make clear that we are not having the intention to start from ground zero in this program, that you'd have to worry about, well, if I already have a bachelor's degree in finance, economics, related disciplines, will they just make me do the same thing all over again? No, absolutely not. And from that perspective, to make clear that we're not really starting from ground zero, the fundamentals carry the label advanced fundamentals, right? So these are gonna be bases for subsequent specialization work, but at a level that really enables you to understand the state-of-the-art research. We'll have these advanced fundamentals in finance, both on the asset pricing side and the corporate finance side, the two key subfields of finance. In economics, the two core areas where everybody has to be fluent in is microeconomics and macroeconomics. And then, as you see, there's really a significant portion also on making sure you can work with data. We'll have two econometrics courses, a course more on the side of working with microdata, whether these are data of individual households, data of individual banks. Microdata takes care of those, and we're also going to look in that context into more recent tools that have come through under the label of data science, dealing with typically particularly large data sets, but we'll also have econometrics looking specifically now at studying asset returns, at studying macroeconomic time series such as inflation, exchange rates, and understanding what models are empirically useful to both assess what has happened in the past, but of course also think about what that tells us for purposes of forecasting future values of the series under consideration. And again, a full course on issues of programming languages, where we really want to get you into open source software, not proprietary software, open source software. I think that's really generally the way to go, not just for affordability reasons. And so we will look at open source software that can be used to program in economics, finance, move towards that implementation stage of bringing models to the data, checking data, forecasting data, simulating policy scenarios. So yes, this is quite comprehensive foundational base, but we do that on purpose. I know that, of course, there are master programs that tell you, you have done your foundations at the bachelor level. Let's just talk about specific topics right away. I'm not saying that's wrong. It definitely is not wrong, but it's not going to be something that's going to help you a long time down the road. It may help you a great deal in terms of understanding better what are some of the policy issues discussed right now, but really all that you can do is learn about the perspective of others. And a master program, a graduate program should be beyond going that stage of learning about the perspectives of others, but really making that transition to not just understand what others do, but applying that yourself. So that, you don't need to call up down the road former professors, hire expensive consultants to do the analysis for you, but that you can really do it yourself. That's the sustainable and fundamental way to go, and that's why we have a quite strong focus on fundamentals. But of course, fundamentals on their own are also not sufficient at all. And so in that sense, we also have a equally strong component of specialization courses on their own, before we can talk about other components of the program involving transferable skills, in-depth hands-on work yourself. So in terms of the specialization, you will have choices between finance courses, economics courses. So really the idea is not to view this program as a program where eventually you discard all economics and look, in quotes, only at finance issue, or the other way around, discard all finance and only at economics issues, because these issues are interwoven. People who want to operate in financial markets need to understand economies. And people who want to work on economic policy design, they need to understand financial markets. That's been abundantly clear in the last 15 plus years in the global financial crisis, that if you think about designing policies for the, in quotes, real economy, that they're going to be flawed if they don't take into account what's happening in financial markets. So these issues are interwoven, and though from that perspective, we certainly also expect that at the specialization phase, you will take courses both on the finance side, the economic side, as well as that empirical modeling side. For the latter part, again, really see it yourself. It's one important part in econometrics data science to teach methods. Most of the time, when they are taught in situations where they work, and then you move to your own data sets and get a shock if things don't work, and if the results seem a bit strange and don't seem to be all that nicely interpretable, like in the courses that you took. And so that's a crucial stage also here, to make sure that you get lots of guidance in going hands-on work, and so that's going to be part of these specialization modules as well. We had said that, of course, we do understand that there's more needed than to be, if I put it in a negative way, a nerd, right? The first two blocks are basically about becoming a nerd. But my point, of course, is you need to be a nerd in order to be successful in financial markets and global economic analysis. But if you're only a nerd, yes, then that's probably also not going to bring you that far. And so from that perspective, we certainly also will talk about transferable skills issues. And people will talk about that who really have knowledge on that, in-depth knowledge. We're going to cooperate on this count, for example, with Goethe Business School, at the University in Frankfurt. They have been running for a number of years executive training programs, also professional master programs, where they have developed a great set of courses with industry-leading experts on issues of negotiations, on issues of strategic networking, on issues of intercultural competence. And so these are going to be the issues that will also tackle in these transferable skills courses. By the way, I might mention in this context, both for the transferable skills courses as well as those practice topics, we are also going to give you an opportunity to say you could partly substitute for some of those courses with experience in the working place. That there will be a possibility to credit work that's of course occurring at the time of your participating in the master program, to credit that for the practice topics. That's 6 credit points out of the total 42 credit points for specializations, and for the 6 credit points on transferable skills. If there are questions about that, we can talk about that in more detail at the Q&A stage. But if the general question is, could we also gain within the program some experience in the working place, there's certainly the opportunity again through contributing some of the credits in the practice topics and the transferable skills through actual work at select companies and institutions. Concluding the discussion of the structure of the program, a full semester, the 4th semester, up to this point, up to the in-depth hands-on, if you add all these credit points up, that's 90, that's 3 semesters, 30 credit points per semester. And so the full last semester, the 4th semester, is intended for the master thesis. A particular feature that we'll have there is that concurrently to writing the master thesis, and of course being advised by a senior faculty member on your master thesis, you're also going to engage in a master thesis seminar. What that's going to involve is that there will be 2 presentations early on of the topic, of the outline of your master thesis, both to your fellow students as well as faculty who are going to look at this from a broader perspective perhaps than your advisor. I mean, that they are not perhaps specifically working in the area of research that's underlying your thesis topics, but assess this from a broader perspective of how valuable is this work, how clearly is the research question phrased, and so on. And so you will present to such faculty as well as your peers in the master thesis seminar when it's about the thesis topic, the outline, and then a second time around when first results have been there, so that again the specific feedback that of course you will continue to get from your thesis advisor individually is complemented by feedback from your peers, by feedback from the directors of the master thesis seminar, to give you the chance to also view this through a broader lens in terms of how valuable are those results, how they may be best communicated to make clear that they are relevant. And so from that perspective, this is going to be a quite interactive approach to writing the master thesis that we'll practice in the 4th semester, where, as I said before, you have the option to do that on Campus West and at Goethe University. You can certainly stay in Vietnam as well. It's strictly optional to spend that 4th semester in Frankfurt. All the course sequence is going to be on location in Vietnam, and again benefiting from the smaller class sizes that are possible at VGU, but that we couldn't offer, for example, at Goethe University to the students enrolled in programs there. All right, so much for the structure. Now, trying to anticipate in the context of the structure some questions that frequently arise, and of course that's not precluding any questions that you may also have at a subsequent stage. Minimum prerequisite for enrollment in the program is a bachelor's degree, and formally that has to be completed 6 months after enrollment in the program. So it is very much possible, to transition right away from the conclusion of the bachelor program to the master program, and if something like a bachelor thesis was still not formally done with yet, because maybe it wasn't graded yet by the bachelor thesis supervisor, that's not a formal exclusion from being able to enter the program. But of course, it's also very much possible to say, I've done my bachelor a year or two, maybe more years ago. I've gained practical working experience, and now I want to return. Because I see that what I've been learning in the bachelor is valuable, but is not yet at the point when I can really engage in my own independent analysis. So both scenarios are very much possible. Keys for success in the program, beyond the commitment to spend your time in the program, I would roughly say at this stage, if you think about doing this program and at the same time stay in a work position, that work shouldn't involve more than 1 to 1.5 days of work per week, and have to be sufficiently flexible so that you can take part in courses. More is really not going to be practical in terms of mastering the program contents and doing a good job at work as well. So that's what I mean by a commitment. But beyond that, what is relevant? Analytical thinking skills, proficiency to work with mathematical concepts. Right. So if you say, I love economics, I love finance, but I stop loving it when it comes to the point of constructing a model, calculating magnitudes as to how policy changes affect the core variables of interest, then I'm afraid, and it's just important to be realistic, you will not love this program. This program is going to be more mathematical than a bachelor program in economics and finance, irrespective of where you have been enrolled in that bachelor program in economics or finance. There's no question about it. At the same time, this is not a program for mathematicians, right? This is not a master program in mathematics. So we're not trying to scare you away here. We're just trying to be realistic. If you have completed a good bachelor program in economics, finance, and I have a good comfort level at working with mathematical concepts, will certainly make sure that this program is going to be absolutely feasible for you. Also, in part, anticipating on the next bullet item, the pre-semester courses that will offer without credit, but as a chance to make sure that you're right there where you need to be on the first day of formal classes, pre-semester courses in mathematics, statistics, econometrics. The other way around, if you say, well, math is not the issue because I have been studying math in the past. I've been studying computer science in the past, or physics in the past, or some other discipline from the sciences or in engineering. You are very welcome to apply for our program as well. Of course, in that case, the prerequisites that you will need to tackle will probably not have to do with mathematics and related areas, but will have to deal with having an understanding of principles of financial and economic analysis. And so we are going to offer, as part of the pre-semester courses, also basically in a very compact format, intermediate macroeconomics, microeconomics, finance courses. And that's then going to be very essential for those who come from outside of economics and finance. But it's very much a program where we invite also applications from those who at the bachelor's level have been in engineering or the sciences. And so, given, of course, in particular that VGU has such a good many engineering programs, if you're not an engineer, spread the word among your engineering friends that this could be a very much an issue that could interest them to broaden their horizon to also understand financial markets. Economic analysis in the program will offer them exactly that opportunity too. So we in short, intend to bring together people from differing backgrounds at the bachelor level, both from the economic and financial analysis background, as well as the science and engineering background. I talked about the optional stay a couple times now before, so let me here just say a couple more words about the Experience Frankfurt program. Per se, for the optional Frankfurt stay, you could stay the whole semester, to work the whole semester on your master thesis at Goethe University. The Experience Frankfurt finance program is going to be shorter, about 4 weeks, no course credit per se, but we are going to bring you to the major financial institutions in Frankfurt, enable you to interact, ask questions to professionals at the European Central Bank, at the Deutsche Bundesbank, and banks such as Deutsche Bank, for example, but also the stock exchange in Frankfurt to learn about their perspectives. And of course, we'll be careful in terms of picking people there again who already have this quantitative background that we are pushing in the program, and can tell you yet more beyond these practice topics courses, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So that's going to be 4 weeks, and so there's of course also the option to say, well, I'm going to come to Frankfurt for this Experience Frankfurt program for those 4 weeks, but the remaining 5 months of the 4th semester I'm going to spend in Vietnam and work on my master thesis there. These are all valid options. Why choose this program? Again, I said at the beginning, right, when you look at announcements of master programs, there's a risk that they don't sound that different, even if in reality they are fundamentally different, but you may not learn about that until you have stepped into the classroom and seen the courses. From our side here, I would stress what I told you about rigor, enabling you to do that fundamental analysis down the road yourself. We vouch for that. We stand for that. But again, I understand that other programs may say the same without really intending to do it. So from that perspective, of course, also important to get a sense of where's the faculty coming from, the program directors, what is their track record on designing, executing programs, and so on. The latter issue, this first bullet item, the degree programs of the Graduate School of Economics, Finance, Management that I'm heading as the dean has been labeled the best practice of graduate education at the German University by the New York office of the German Academic Exchange Service, so specifically comparing the structure of our programs to those at leading programs in the US. So in that sense, all modesty aside, we believe we know what we are talking about. Secondly, instructors, faculty teaching you, they're going to be unilaterally of high academic repute, involved in key international research networks, the NBR's research network in the United States, home to leading US economists in their subject areas, but also inviting experts from abroad, such as colleagues at Goethe University. The CPR is a corresponding network in London at the European level. And so if you look at the faculty profiles of colleagues in finance, macroeconomics at Goethe University, you will see such memberships in key international research networks. So they really know what's happening currently in research on a great many of the faculty profiles. But again, not just interest of faculty to succeed academically, but numerous of our faculty members have links to policy making in the form of being advisors, consultants for various institutions. I myself have spent a good bit of time with the World Bank, with the IMF, also with the ECB. Other colleagues also have been working at the US Federal Reserve. Dr. Ha, as we said earlier, has been working at the State Bank of Vietnam. So crucial, I think, to all of us is to do work on issues where we say that's actually of interest to people outside academia too, and helps us understand policy making. And so I think that combination is really crucial. Both are per se good, but in isolation, only policy experience or only academic excellence, they are not going to help you really to prepare for a career in financial markets, in policy making at public sector institutions. You really need both, and so if you check the faculty profiles, you will see that in virtually every profile that experience is there. In terms of placement records, of course, Dr. Haag can say yet more about the general placement record of VGU that I understand VGU is very proud about too. But, this is about a specific program in finance economics at the master level. And of course, that's the first such program at VGU. And so in terms of the placement record, I'm referring here to the placement record of corresponding programs that we've been running for 10 to 15 years now at Goethe University. And then just as one indication of how strong the demand for our graduates is, many programs, of course, run placement centers where they have staff who's trying to market their graduates to financial market institutions, public sector institutions. We don't have that at Goethe University for our programs. Why not? Because there's absolutely no need for it. The graduates are in such strong demand that there's absolutely no need for us to have coordinated job market activities. The demand has been strong, continues to be strong, both at the peak of crisis, but also outside the peak of crisis. So that is something where we feel also very confident that by successful completion of this program, you really open many doors for your professional career. Finally, here, in terms of choosing this program, student services are important, right? That beyond the support from the faculty, you also have advising services on a broader scale. Again, I think VGU, from all I know, is very proud about what it's offering on that count. At Goethe University, you're going to work in this program with the expert at Goethe Business School. I've told you before that Goethe Business School is running professional master programs, executive training programs, also for about 15 plus years now. And in that context has built up an international administration of staff members who care about their students, who don't take a formalistic perspective per se, but have that perspective, making sure that you find it a rewarding experience to be a student, become a proud alumna or alumnus of our program, carry the name of our programs around the world. And in that sense, all the student services are dedicated to making sure that to the extent, of course, that it's possible, we can provide for you the environment where you can really focus on your studies. Of course, some of those are issues that go well beyond what any university could do, right? There's no doubt about that. But again, within the means of what the university could do, I think we have highly motivated and experienced counselors and staff on providing all issues related to student services and academic records. Watching time, I'm really coming to the end of this presentation. What can we say about the application process at this point? We expect that the details of the requirements, I'll talk about the requirements, but at this point, this is not yet all set in stone, that the details in the form of what is going to be set in stone will be available in the early stages of 2022, together with the application form then. Whether this is going to be February, March, but I'd expect in that time frame, we'll also have the application form available, and of course at that time know all the requirements. But to prepare, anticipate, Simple part is the transcript, the degree certificate. Again, at the time of application, you do not have to have the bachelor's degree yet. As I said before, right, at a formal level, we must receive this bachelor's degree certificate within 6 months of enrollment in the program. That's a strict deadline, so definitely if you're in the second year of a bachelor program, you shouldn't apply. There's no way that you're going to be having your work completed in time. And we would never admit you for that reason alone, because it's completely unrealistic. But again, if you're in the final stages of completing a bachelor degree this year, then you don't have to have the degree yet to apply. That's the main message here. We will have some assessment of your analytical, mathematical skills. This could occur, for example, in the form of the quantitative score on the credit record examinations test or the GMAT test, but there may also be substitutes available, for example, examinations run by VGU itself. That's one of the issues where we'll communicate more details in the very early stages of 2022. But from my perspective, I think it's always a good idea to take these GRE, GMAT, the quantitative score tests and really see where you stand on that on a global scale. As far as the English language requirements are concerned, there will be formal English language requirements for the program. They will definitely be fulfillable, for example, through participating in the TOEFL or IELTS English language tests. But again, we expect to offer substitutes for that, and then we'll communicate specific details. Some of those details could also include, for example, that if you have been graduating from a English language bachelor program, that then we can waive any formal tests of English language proficiency. What we'll also want to have is a letter of evaluation, ideally from a faculty member who knows you, the coursework of yours at the bachelor level, perhaps supervising your bachelor thesis, though we will not be per se excluding the possibility that you could also ask a supervisor at work, for example, provided that supervisor knows what our program structure is and has an appreciation for what it is. That's essential. Otherwise, any recommendation is pretty much useless. It has to be someone who knows what we are going to teach in the program, what we expect from you to be able to do in the program. Okay, so that's the outlook on application documents. Despite the fact that things are not yet set in stone, if you think about entering in fall 2022, and we'll have new students once a year in fall, so fall 22 will be the first time, and then the next opportunity again will arise in fall 2023. If you think about applying for fall 2022, nonetheless, I would strongly recommend to think about this relatively early on. You can already think about such letters of evaluation. You can already think about, does it make sense for you to take part in the GMAT test, TOEFL, IELTS test? Also, if you want to have answers for that from us, you can definitely address that to us. And after the session today, I'm sure Dr. Ha will be very happy if he knows more about your individual profile to give you an assessment as to whether he would advise you to take GRE, GMAT and or TOEFL, IELTS, or whether you may be better off not to invest time into preparing for those tests. But overall, again, we would advise you to advise you to apply as early as possible. Again, probably about March, April, when we'll accept the first applications. Regular courses will in that case begin then in early September. Pre-semester courses will be before then. So you should probably also plan in any year, if you start in September, to have a good bit of time available for such pre-semester courses during the month of August. They will probably be by and large in some online format, irrespective of the pandemic, so you don't have to be on campus or anything like that, but you should have time. to work on that in August as well. So that's it from my side, while I've exhausted almost a full hour on the presentation, of course we are happy, Dr. Han and myself, to be available for questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Binder. Thank you for the eloquent and excellent introduction to the program. Thank you, spectators. Thank you for your attention. Until now, I have received 2 questions from you. So we will start addressing those 2 questions first, and then if you have further questions, we will be happy to continue. Okay. So Professor Binder, may I share my screen now so that
sure.
the audience can see the questions? Okay. Yeah. So the question. So can you see my sharing now?
We see the sharing. We saw the questions, I think, for a second, but now we see you're sharing the. Yes, now we see the questions.
Yeah. I see now. So I see the from now. So. The question 1 from Mr. Đỗ Trạng Nguyên. So his question is, Vietnam is a special version of Vietnam has a very special version of an economy. So we call, the name is the socialist oriented market economy. So it is open market, but with a socialism orientation. So how your lecture would be able to cover this special structure of the economy?
So maybe let me say a few words first, and then I'm sure how you will also want to add perspectives from your side. So we think of our program as a program, again, that's thinking about the challenges in economics, finance on a global scale. That one needs to understand what's happening around the world in different structures of economies and financial markets, advanced, emerging, developing, and then, of course, as is pointed out by this question, for example, within the context of emerging markets, there are different institutional contexts as well, absolutely. Our program, at the same time, is a program that's going to be strictly on the side of economics and finance. That is, we will not have any political aspect in this program. Assess governance, of course, from the perspective, for example, corporate finance, to think about proper governance structures for banks, insurance companies, exchanges, think about the governance issues from the perspective of, say in the context of central banks, what are generally established principles under which central banks can operate successfully, what degree of independence may help central banks to operate successfully. But we do not have the intention to get into specific issues of commenting on politics. That's certainly not going to be the idea in this program. Now, many of the courses for the advanced fundamentals courses, the specialization courses, right, they're going to teach methodology, where the idea is, of course, that methodology should not just be applicable in the context of the German economy, but should, of course, also be applicable in the context of the Vietnamese economy. But again, having said that we don't just want to think about issues at the local level, but at a broader global level. And so, of course, yes, even if some issues may not be currently arising for the State Bank of Vietnam, like, for example, the zero low bond issue monetary policy, you will still want to know about, because otherwise you have no chance to understand how does the State Bank of Vietnam have to respond to what the US Federal Reserve does, what the Bank of England does, what the European Central Bank does. And so there's going to be a broader institutional context needed on that global scale too. In terms of the local institutional context, let me also remind you of the portion on the practice topics, where I said, for example, people whom we intend to bring in may involve a representative of the IMF who has been the IMF's representative to Vietnam for a good many years, at the same time working on quantitative modeling at the IMF for a good many years. And of course, that is also a person then who has a high degree of credibility of understanding the institutional structure of Vietnam. I personally will be very honest and say I do not claim that I have a high degree of institutional knowledge about Vietnam. I had the pleasure and honor, to have a number of stays in Vietnam to teach in the bachelor programs in finance and accounting and business administration, and of course have tried to use that time also to understand more about the institutional context. But I wouldn't claim that I'm an expert on understanding specific institutional aspects of Vietnam, and I think the same will be true for many of my colleagues from Goethe University teaching in the program. But again, that's where we are complementing this with lecturers from VGU who are going to contribute to the course sequence, professional experts. So that for sure we are not intending to offer a program, that's ignoring institutional reality, but again, without getting into a discussion of politics. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so thank you, Professor Binder, for that very clear elaboration on our program and the relationship with the with the socialist market-oriented economy of Vietnam. I thank you, Chang Nguyen, for the question. I think I want to draw your attention to the most recent writing by our General Secretary about some theoretical and practical issues on socialism and the path towards socialism in Vietnam. So with this question, why I am diverting you to this article. In this article, the top leader of our country detail how the economy works and how what the goal of our society is. So like Professor Binder already emphasized, we are scientists and we want to focus on the scientific aspects of the economic relationships. We want to focus on the causality between economic policies and the key economic consequences that may result in the economy. So how can we contribute to that process? I think the most important contribution that we may have is to help to make the best out of our students, to equip them with the best possible state-of-the-art, analytical tools, so that they like Professor Binder already said, they understand what the other central banks, other financial institutions are doing, what are the possible consequences of their actions, and then you can, with that understanding, you can help facilitate the policy making process, the macroeconomic policy dialogues, and also you can help if you are working for the government, if you are working for financial institutions like big international financial banks or financial institutions, then you can also understand and make and advise on the board and of management the right policy or the right response that the institution should take in order to accommodate not only the policies of Western market players, market makers, but also the possible actions from the more socialist-oriented players like the Vietnamese, well, like Vietnam or China to some extent, like Professor Binder mentioned at the beginning of the lecture. Yeah, so this is a very open and difficult questions, but I think that the main focus is that we will train you to become scientists. And as scientists, you add your value into your analysis so that you can make possible normative advice to the relevant stakeholders that during your career. Yeah. So should I move on to the second question?
Yeah, I would suggest we do that unless there's a immediate follow-up on it.
Yeah. So the second question is from Mr. Thang Le. So yeah, this is something Professor Binder already addressed, but I think it's fair for you to be a little bit more detailed here, because it will be a little bit out of the safe water for engineering students to move on with such a demanding training program in economics and finance. So, Professor Binder, can you elaborate a little bit more about this?
Sure. I'd be happy to do so. So first, just to reconfirm, we are very much also inviting applications from those whose background is in engineering, in mathematics, in the sciences, or for that matter, any quantitative discipline. If you look at the financial market professionals, there is a large number of financial market professionals who have some background, indeed, also in some of the quantitative disciplines, whether it's mathematics, physics, engineering. But you will, I think, very, very rarely see someone who hasn't also gone through some formal training and education on the finance and economic side, in the sense that while, of course, quantitative programs probably could prepare you to already know a great deal of the quantitative methodology that we apply in economics and finance, it's crucial in order to apply this methodology to also understand principles of economic behavior, principles of behavior by financial market participants. And that's what microeconomics, macroeconomics, asset pricing, corporate finance is about, that we model the decision-making of participants in the economy, in the financial market. Think about how they reach their decisions, aggregate up those decisions to understand what's happening in markets at large. And so that's crucial in order to be successful. If someone is a great scientist, they bring a lot of tools with them to be successful in economic analysis and financial markets, but those tools alone are gonna probably eventually reduce them to the margins, unless they also understand what is the decision-making rationale of all those who interact in financial markets and the economy in households, firms, government institutions, regulators. And so we, of course, teach these latter issues, decision-making in households, firms, in the government sector, within the program, but there is a starting point. There's a starting point that, again, the courses are not fundamentals in the sense of going back to ground zero, but the courses do presume knowledge of what we in our discipline call intermediate macroeconomics, intermediate microeconomics, intermediate asset pricing, and corporate finance. That is material that, of course, now we typically teach in a bachelor program in economics finance in semester-long courses, so 4 semester-long courses, but we're going to offer pre-semester courses that are going to condense that to a period of 1 month. That's going to be essential when one makes that transition from engineering, from the sciences to our program, to take that very serious, that pre-semester course sequence.